Welcome to Solved, the political discussion show for people with attention spans and those hoping to recover or rebuild theirs. My name is Jay, and our other resident solvers today are Amanda and Erin, who will offer a greeting now.
Hey there.
How's it going?
Collectively, we produce the venerable, indispensable, not to mention award-winning podcast Best of the Left, where humans, that's us, curate progressive media on a chosen topic, creating episodes that are greater than the sum of their parts. On this show, we use those same curation skills to pull together stories and ideas that help us solve some of society's biggest problems, because if we don't tell you how to think, someone dumber on the internet will. Today, we're talking about aesthetics, which turn out to be more important than you'd think, in part because Trump is one of the most shallow people in the world who thinks that looking the part is essentially the only necessary qualification for a job. He loves to point out when someone is straight out of central casting, because that's basically all that matters to him. But aesthetics also play a major role in how we're all experiencing the world right now, because the news isn't just horrible, it's being stage managed by sociopaths who love cruelty and who do their best to show it. We're starting today with this article from Vox. MAGA glam isn't about beauty, it's about politics. And it starts with a description of what Erin and Amanda just reminded me is often referred to as Mar-a-Lago face. And it says, quote, "There is a particular style of makeup that we see that seems to be favored by women on Fox News and women in Trump's orbit. Blocky brows that feel very defined, bold eyeliner, and so on. Beyond makeup, however, there are people, both women and men, but especially women, who seem to have gotten very visible plastic surgery." And then continuing in the context of politics, it ties it together here, saying, quote, "These extreme looks are a callback to a different era of plastic surgery. These extreme policies are a callback to a different time in the United States. There's a reversion of both policy and aesthetics," end quote. And then it goes on to describe how our real world policies now basically mimic the over the top nature of reality TV shows, and that everything actually looks so shocking that it's hard to imagine that it's real or to really tune into the reality of the actual human beings being affected by the policies. So that's how, just at the surface level, the aesthetics of Trump politics overlays the horrors of the reality of the policy.
I mean, I was a little shocked that this article did not include the word propaganda, because that is part of what's happening here. They need to achieve a certain look so that they can send a certain message, so that they can appeal to a certain kind of person. And all of that is part of the Trump propaganda machine. I mean, it's why Fox News hires certain women and then makes them go blonde and put them in a short, skin tight dress. And now it's on steroids because it's coming from the government. This is the fascist weaponization of the male gaze. And it's using hyper-feminization. And like, that's hard to even say. Like, it's hyper. These people look weirder than Stepford Wives. Like, they're not it's a bizarro world version of feminization, and it is for distraction purposes. They want you to think a patriotic woman looks like this, even though most of their base can't afford to make themselves look this artificial. And at the end of the day, like, it's grotesque, and I'm not, women can do whatever they want with their bodies, but, like, this is a crafted look. This is a extremely hyper manicured look for a purpose, and that purpose is propaganda. So the fact that every woman in power in the Trump administration looks the same and is made up more like a clown than a real person is bizarre. And look, I don't have like sympathy for these women. They are adults, they choose what they choose, but they are also like at the same time poster children victims of the patriarchy. I think both can be true. And nothing they stand for benefits women. They're the wives and aunties in this sick version of The Handmaid's Tale, like holding up and perpetuating the system that hurts everyone, even them, at the end of the day. And so, like, the crafting of it all and the propaganda of it all is so stark and so obvious, and it's disgusting because it's not just for entertainment purposes, it is coming from our government.
I think this has also been around for a long time. It's more the, like, culmination of it and seeing it so laid bare, I guess, in relation to the presidency and how close they are to that power. I'm thinking of, like, Tommy Lauren, right? She wasn't particularly talented or educated in certain ways, like, her debate style was awful, but, like, she was the right wing, like,
Barbie.
bombshell, if you will. She was someone that they could push up, and I think it also, in a way, shields them from accusations of, like, sexism because, like, certain women are elevated, certain women are given the platform,
Mhm.
but the sexism exists in who gets the voice and who gets a seat at the table and what they have to do in order to get that seat. So, yeah, it's gross, but I'm with Amanda. I'm not into policing people's bodies. I don't need to point out all of the double standards and stuff that exist on the right, but I know, like, when talking about trans women in particular, there was a discussion around them performing hyper-femininity and, like,
Yeah.
it being said in, like, a, "Oh, that's what you think a woman is. You're demeaning women by having this, like, hyper-femininity." But, like, that's exactly what these women are doing. Like, all gender is a performance, and they very much are leaning into the hyper-femininity of it, and probably for, let's say it together, access to power.
Right.
Yeah,
And
exactly. No, that you set me
yeah.
up perfectly because what I was just about to say is the perfect comparison, which we're all on the record agreeing that women are allowed to do whatever they want with their faces and bodies. This article says the same thing. It literally says people should do what they want with their face. But when you pair the brutality of the policies with almost brutal face augmentation, they feel connected and worth interrogating. That's where the article is going with it. But the access to power is exactly where I was going because the Fox News and Trump connection, I mean, besides the obvious, is that Roger Ailes, who is a disgusting sexual predator, ran Fox News and directly told people what they had to wear in order to be on Fox News. So, in order to have access to the job and the power and the influence that
Mhm.
comes with being on Fox News, you didn't just have to say and think the right things, you had to look the right way.
Mhm.
And Trump has brought that same mentality to the MAGA movement, and now it's in his ideal. So, like, Trump is a disgusting maniac with bizarro world ideas of what's attractive, and
And
that's
also a sexual predator.
and also a sexual predator, and that's how all of these women look now. They all look the way Trump wants them to look, which is grotesque because that's what he's into for whatever reason.
Mhm. It made me think of before this really was fine-tuned, this look, it made me think of Kellyanne Conway and her progression when she first started going on TV and doing her Trump pundit thing. She slowly started looking kinda wilder and wilder, like, her makeup was getting kinda crazy, her lipstick was kinda crazy, like, things did not look normal. I'm not gonna go diagnose everybody here or anything, but I think there is a connection with being willing to do stuff like this to your body and face to seek the power you want, and something kind of broken with you. Something is off, and, like, I mean, they're doing horrific things. They are clearly broken people, but to do that to yourself is a sign of something else going on internally. I can't help but feel that way. I feel like I've seen this progression happen so many times now. I don't know. It's unnerving.
All of this brings us perfectly to one of the next best poster children, Trump 2.0, Kristi Noem. And this from Mother Jones, the headline, "The Delicate, Beautiful, Tiny Fascism
Ugh.
of Kristi Noem," which is a pull quote from a horrible Republican who gets mentioned in the article. And so it describes how Kristi Noem was giving a speech when Senator Alex Padilla was forcibly removed from the room for standing up and asking a question after having identified who he was. And in response to that incident, the right turned Noem into the victim with a Florida Republican with a ridiculous name, Anna Paulina, saying, quote, "She's like the most delicate, beautiful, tiny woman. What actual testosterone dude goes in and tries to break Kristi Noem?" End quote. And there is so much to unpack
Whoa,
there.
yeah, no shit.
The primary detail of which is like the inversion of victimhood and the instinct. I mean, like, they know, like, their instinct about what they're doing with this whole aesthetic look that they're cultivating, they know what it's about. They know that putting a tiny woman who presents herself as peak feminine in the eyes of Trump and MAGA in charge of the brown shirts is a defense against everything Homeland Security does. Because how could they be overreaching? How could they be overly violent? How could they be the victimizers when the person running it is so petite?
Yeah. And Kristi Noem's foil basically is Tom Homan, who is like a ruthless and not pretty looking goon for Trump. And so every time they need a certain message, they put him out there in front of the press. And every time they need a different message, they put Kristi Noem out there. And they're using them as this dual way to craft the story of their inhumane immigration raids and policies.
I keep thinking of like the, I don't know, 22-year-olds who eat the shit up, right? I think Trump's team, like, they play gender roles very well. Like, I do think there's such an intentionality with that. And like, it's all bullshit. Like, we could go into it. Gender is a construct. Things are fluid. To me, like what Amanda said about broken people, that kind of resonates in the way that like none of us can achieve that perfection, right? None of us are, wait, I shouldn't say none. Most of us. Most of us can't actually achieve the perfection that is, demanded of our gender. And what I think about these characters, and I'm going to call them characters because it definitely feels like a performance. What I think about these characters are like, they are broken little kids who grew up and are just trying their best not to draw attention to the fact that they're broken children. And like, I think of JD Vance and like that clean shaved beard, but like you can read his book and all it says is like, I have so much childhood trauma that I'm going to inflict it onto other people.
Yeah.
Like, and I could feel bad for them if they weren't doing such atrocious things under this guise.
Right.
But I think
because
the
you're a good person.
Yeah, because I'm a good person. But I think the attractiveness is they are reaching people who don't fit that gender category. Like they're not super masculine or super feminine in those ways, but they aspire to be. The team and the image that they project like seems achievable.
Yeah.
Like we have steps to put in place and this will be the norm and we will all fit into this group. We can get rid of the weirdos, the freaks, the gays, the trans people. Like we can get rid of all of them and just have this classic version. And like what you'll find, get rid of all those people and you're still not going to fit that classic manly definition or that classic feminine definition. Like it is unachievable for a reason. Again, because of the image that they project, like have a couple surgeries, do some gender affirming care, and you too can be hyper feminized or hyper masculine.
Yeah. I do find it interesting that they note that it is bad, like obvious plastic surgery, when for years now the goal has been to have plastic surgery and have it not be obvious. Like the fact that it is obvious and everyone knows is again, some sort of strange twist in this whole thing. But speaking of masculinity, the fact that Anna Paulina said, what actual testosterone dude goes in and tries to break Kristi Noem was such a mindfuck for me. I was like, wait, isn't that what you are all about? Isn't that what you're into? What do you mean? Like, went out of her way to say that. I mean,
that's
first
the
of all,
gag, though,
if
right?
all it, yeah, I know, but like if all it takes is asking Kristi Noem questions to quote break her, which is all Alex Padilla did, then maybe she shouldn't be the head of Homeland Security. Like all I hear there is like she's a wimpy little white lady who cries when her disgusting cruelty is challenged with words. Like, fuck, so scary. Jesus.
But that's what it is. Like, if you're creating the worldview where women are delicate mothers who need to be protected, like, she fits that bill
Yeah.
perfectly.
Yeah. She's powerful
Yeah.
when they want her to be. She's a flower when they want her to be. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the malleability is absolutely intrinsic to the value there. That quote, I did sort of glaze over it. It also broke my brain because the lack of grammar, first of all, I mean, I'm just reading the quote directly.
Yeah.
I am assuming they wrote it as well as they could to match what she said. I didn't hear what she said, but the grammar didn't make sense. I don't know what a testosterone dude is. I don't know if she's high testosterone, low testosterone. What's the implication about what Alex Padilla is? I also, maybe I'm giving more credit than reasonable. I was actually assuming that the right was framing the story as because he stood up or stepped forward in some way and that he was tackled basically and run out of the room, that the threat was legitimate, that the right's framing is that the threat was legitimate. And
Mhm.
so she was criticizing him as like what kind of person tries to step up to Kristi Noem and beat her up, which is
Right.
just like
As
not
though he was
reflective of
gonna
reality.
do that. Yeah.
But yeah, like framing that as someone with too much testosterone would do that, but the right loves testosterone.
Yeah.
It's yeah,
None of it makes sense.
no, and you'll just hurt yourself if you try to figure it out. So
Mhm.
don't worry about that. But yeah, I mean the gender framing, as Erin said, like they're very good at it, and the article does get into that. So it says, quote, Noam's rise to power has long seemed to rely on this intentional contradiction, perfectly styled hair while deriding caged immigrants in the background, heavily caked makeup while tagging along for made for TV immigrant raids, tough on crime, but delicate, beautiful, tiny. As I wrote in a recent piece, it is the push for regressive gender roles by an increasingly fascist administration, end quote. And that's what it is. It's like the mirror world version of feminism is that it's feminist to go back to a regressive gender
Mhm.
role. They can invert literally any element of reality to fit their needs as they need. And regressive gender roles being held up as the new form of women's empowerment on the right is the least surprising thing about it because we have seen them invert every other element of reality in basically the same way.
Mhm. The other thing this article brought up is the baked in racism to all of this. And, whether it's Padilla or they mentioned Representative LaMonica McIver, who's a Black congresswoman from New Jersey, indicted on charges of impeding and interfering law enforcement officials outside an ICE detention facility. And if you watch that video, she is being assaulted by ICE officials. She is being swarmed and bumped up against by them. She is not doing anything. But that's the point, right? They want to put out the message of we don't believe anybody who isn't a white person. And even then, if you're on the wrong side, we don't believe you. But especially if you're not a white person, your word should not be taken for granted, even though it's on video and you can see what is happening for yourself. The status quo they want to establish is if a border agent shoves you, you are now the assailant. And that's the culture of fear that they want to enforce. And so protect Kristi Noem at all costs. If you do anything, if you say anything, if you whatever, it doesn't matter. Your word is not taken at face value, no matter what video evidence is there. And I was thinking about the American citizen who was just detained in LA the other week. She was literally just being dropped off for work by her mother and sister. Where she worked happened to be near where an ICE raid was taking place, and her mother and sister watched her get kidnapped in the rearview mirror. And she was literally lifted up and hauled away after being tackled, according to her mother and sister's account. And was detained for at least 24 hours, maybe more, finally released on like $5,000 bond. and she's being charged with resisting arrest and assaulting an officer. She did not do that. She was absolutely racially profiled, but it almost doesn't matter, right? Because no matter what, we don't believe you. We only believe the word of the agents. And all of that is wrapped up from Padilla to all of the people so far who've been detained, including elected officials outside detention facilities. It is a reframing of reality, and then race and gender are like baked into this whole cause.
So I would say with like MacGyver, right? The argument I heard was that why were you there? As if you just showing up and
Yeah.
like doing something that's completely legal
Yep.
is against that. Like any opposition to those actions can be seen as an assault and like justify the violence thereafter. And
Mhm.
like that is scary.
Mhm.
I know there's a lot of things to be scared about, but I think just being on the other side, having disagreements where I'm not gonna say it was okay, but, like, that used to be acceptable, and you're not gonna get arrested for being slightly in opposition to something, but that's no longer.
No, it's they wanna change that whole feeling of safety for especially for elected officials. If they can target them and take them down, that's a great signal to everyone else, right?
And
Yeah.
there's 4 broad words that they can use to justify like, "This is MAGA country."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I've just seen that used in, like, so many instances of horrific things happening that, again, were not illegal, but are framed in a way like, "Yep, this is MAGA country,
Yeah,
like,
get used to
we
it.
get to do what we want."
That's a great phrase. I hadn't heard that before, and it's great because it's equally applicable whether you're cheering on or criticizing what's
Mhm.
happening.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Because
and I've seen it used both ways.
well, exactly. I mean, you said it. I was like, that's what I would say to describe the horrors of what's happening.
Yeah.
So the aesthetics of fascism do not stop with people's appearances. And this next article is diving into how AI is getting wrapped up in all of this. So the New Socialist, this is a UK publication, obviously coming from the socialist perspective, wrote AI, the new aesthetics of fascism. But before we get into the article, yesterday there was a comment on our Discord server from a longtime listener, Old Turk, who said, I feel like I'm missing out on a bruised bananas make great banana bread AI generated song, which is a reference to one of the silliest parts of our previous episode. And so, on one hand, they're right. We didn't make a song for that episode. And on the other, look, I know that that listener is sort of joking with their comment, but an AI song about banana bread would really exemplify why we have at least temporarily decided to put those songs on hold for now. We've always been sort of torn on the topic, but the ethical arguments against AI are getting stronger, and the vibes are certainly shifting against it, so much so that we're starting to worry about how making AI songs may actually hold us back while trying to reach a progressive audience on YouTube rather than helping us. And it feels like being in a straitjacket where the right can do things because they don't give a shit, and the
Mhm.
left is constrained by ethics and an effort
Morals.
for like good taste and those sorts of things. So all of this brings us to this article, which begins, quote, it's embarrassing, destructive, and looks like shit. AI generated art is the perfect aesthetic form for the far right. And they go on, and the pillars of their argument are summed up this way. It says, quote, to understand it, we must consider the right's hatred of working people, its more than mutual embrace of the tech industry, and primarily its profound rejection of Enlightenment humanism, which is sort of a big statement, but they get into all of these things and sort of have some fun with it along the way. Essentially, they're arguing that AI displaces artists and designers who would have previously been able to earn a wage. That's certainly true. It's more complicated than that, but as a baseline, that is definitely happening. And this socialist article highlights this as an unmitigated positive for the right. given that the right hates working people so much, it's not like, well, we're displacing people, but like we used to have whalers and because we needed whale oil to light our lamps, but we don't anymore. And it's the natural
Mm.
progression. No, no, no. We hate working people and we're glad to put them out of work. That's where this article is coming from. The embrace of big tech, like the right embracing big tech, just as big tech has very explicitly shifted to being horrible themselves, is fairly clear and doesn't need much explanation. Which brings us to their rejection of Enlightenment humanism. And the article says, quote, AI imagery looks like shit, but that, I want to argue, is its main draw to the right. If AI was capable of producing art that was formally competent, surprising, soulful, then they wouldn't want it. They would be repelled by it. And here's why. It says, quote, the right-wing aesthetic project is to flood the zone with bullshit in order to erode the intellectual foundations for resisting political cruelty. And I think that is getting a long way toward summarizing the vibe difference. This is what I said toward the top. The vibes on the left are turning very strongly against AI because of how it's being used and what its foundations are, what it is built on. It is not just replacing jobs, but it's built on exploitation. It's not just the natural progression of tools from like a screwdriver to a power drill to whatever comes next. It is that, but also empowering some of the biggest and already most powerful corporations in the world who are already doing shitty things. So this is what the left has to worry about. The right doesn't give a shit at all, and since their whole vibe is built on cruelty anyway, it might even be a benefit. It might be like, oh, the left doesn't just hate what we're making, but they hate how we make it. Great. That's a bonus.
Mhm. I will say, I mean, there's the phrase, AI is slop, all AI is slop. That's not actually true. And I think it's probably somewhat important to just mention that because what the right is creating with AI is mostly slop. Yeah. But there actually is a lot of AI artwork that obviously steals from other artists that is not bad and is sometimes even beautiful, right? Because they're pulling from human work and talented artists. And that's part of the problem. Like if it was all bad, it would be one thing. The fact that some of it is beautiful and pleasant to look at means it's harder to kill the industry because there will be people that say like, "No, it's like actually really good. Like look at this." But the fact that the right is using it as slop and then not caring at all about that. Like, look, we tried to make AI songs. We tried to make them good. Jade spent a lot of time and effort like trying to make these songs listenable and worth listening to, and they're based on our conversations and words. The right doesn't right doesn't do that. They just want to create propaganda and the worse it looks the better. That's sort of what we're getting at, right? And the longer we live with AI, the more like I'm very worried about people who are going to be affected by the rise of AI. I'm more like heartbroken and angry about that, but that AI is destroying our sense of reality and not only that, our sense of goodness because it is being used by propagandists. That is the part that is really tugging at me lately. It has barely been around and it has been co-opted by a fascist movement globally, not just in the US. So, very quickly, this new technology is being abused isn't the right word, used in its worst way to do the worst things. That's the best way I can say it.
So the only pushback to that is like the fascists are the ones who are running AI. I mean, like, I know Sam Altman is kind of a confusing character. Like, not a lot of people can fully gauge his ideologies
Yeah, and then it's
because,
stealing. Totally,
yeah,
that's
well, definitely stealing. And I think we don't have laws to protect artists or
Mhm.
creators, if you will. But I also think, though, like, you can't take a fascist person and have them create a beautiful human system that's like able to actually help people and not do the awful shit that like is in their
Right.
intentionality. If you listen to people from AI companies and the way they talk about the world, it is very clear what this technology is designed for. And it's definitely in the way of capitalism and to replace not the shitty jobs that people don't want to do or shouldn't have to do, but to replace things like the creative sector. That I think is the threat because, as we've discussed many times, the evolution of humanity should be to be able to indulge more in arts and do the creative work and have machines do the dull, repetitive tasks that like people don't want to do or don't find joy in.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I definitely have a problem with the tech moguls and like you can't create a good moral, if you will, system when you yourself are a fascist.
Yeah, or corrupt in your morals, yeah.
Did either of you catch the story about Hakeem Jeffries' photoshopped picture? I'm
No.
guessing not. I only came across it because I use Ground News, which shows people's blind spots, like what the right isn't seeing that only the left is talking about, and what the left is seeing or isn't seeing and all the right is talking about. And so this story came up about Hakeem Jeffries, who had just like posted a super bland photo of himself, like standing in a park near a park bench, and it's photoshopped. Like the park bench horizontal slats are warped near his body, and in such a way
What?
that it's kind of hard to even imagine what they were going
Yeah,
for, or what
and
was wrong
why?
with the photo that you were trying to fix that you then tried to fix and it came out badly. And if we lived in a normal world, we might have thoughts about that. Hakeem Jeffries represents a wing of the Democratic Party we're not big fans of, and we might tease him for doing something stupid on the internet. But the right is what primarily came down on him, and the articles, because the right doesn't write news articles about news, they write articles about the criticism about news. The headline is never Hakeem Jeffries edited his photo. The headline is Hakeem Jeffries mercilessly mocked online because
Mhm.
of doctored photo or whatever. Like what I couldn't help but think is these are the same people who cheer on Trump dressing up as a superhero or a king and posting that online.
Mhm.
And they're like, Hakeem Jeffries photoshopped himself a little, and that's a bigger embarrassment to them,
Mhm.
which I can't even quite get into their heads enough to connect the dots of how they can't see the disconnect there. Like it's obviously just naked politics and partisanship,
Yeah.
and they're obviously going to defend their own side, and they're obviously going to critique the other, and there's no logic to it whatsoever. And this article gets into the power element and sort of sums things up this way. It says, quote, if art is the establishing or breaking of aesthetic rules, then AI art, as practiced by the right, says that there are no rules, but the naked exercise of power by an in group over an out group. It says that the only way to enjoy art is in knowing that it's hurting somebody. End quote. And without, for a moment, without even thinking about the element of art, naked power is definitely easy to understand as the current form of far right politics. That is what they are all about. So that fits nicely that it is easy to understand why their art would completely reflect that same idea.
I think a while back I had this reaction because I know we kind of joked about it, I think on the show, about like these Trump images of him like this like elderly cheeseburger bodied man being like dieseled out and super buff, which is so
Right.
disconnected from the reality. But kind of that quote that you just read, it doesn't have to be the reality. I mean, like we could say, well, Trump clearly isn't performing the gender representation that you would like to see. He's like clearly not conforming to that idea of masculinity. But like, why does he need to when AI can just like create this image and project power for him?
Yeah, and that is exactly it, and, like, it's cynical, it's almost nihilistic in some way, but they do have some beliefs, and this right now is part of the strategy. Flood the zone with complete and utter bullshit, project imagery, it doesn't matter if it's real, it doesn't even matter if it's akin to reality. No problems there, this is perpetuating the message we wanna send, and those who like it will get on board immediately. and they have. I am stunned sometimes by the power of this quote unquote movement and how it continues to find new things to coalesce around. And right now, the AI imagery propaganda project is really getting everybody excited. And it's sick. It's really sick. They also reference in this article it was a 1950 political philosopher Lionel Trilling talking about conservatives expressing themselves in irritable mental gestures which seek to resemble ideas. And I really loved that because that is what is going on right now. I mean, it's been going on for a long time, but oh boy, has it never been so clear as right now.
Yeah, so this instinct for people to be presented with something fake, and if they kind of like it, then they'll go with it anyway, is definitely coming to politics in a bigger way than we have seen so far. This is all reminding me of stories that came out of India last year, I think, when there was a big election that they were preparing for. And I kept seeing these stories about the very conscious and purposeful use of deepfakes representing politicians
Mhm.
in a way that like the politicians were in favor of. They're like, I can't go and talk to everyone. I can't say every possible message that needs to be said and then hyper target that. But a deepfake factory can. We can create videos of me saying what needs to be said so that we can hyper target everyone in India. And then beyond that, there were effectively AI telephone chatbots. So instead of getting a recorded message from a politician calling your phone, you would get a chatbot calling your phone, pretending to be the actual candidate and having a real conversation with people who could ask questions. What's your policy on such and such? And the chatbot would respond. And people found it very impactful. And they whether they were being tricked or whether they're like, look, I know what it is, but I still feel like I'm having a connection with this politician because the chatbot is trained on their actual personality and policies. But then, like, what really puts the cap on it and the relation with Trump dressing up as a king or a buff dude or whatever is people were talking about how they would see the deep fakes of a politician, or maybe they'd also refer to the phone calls and say, like, I like the AI generated version of that dude better than the real dude.
Yeah.
But it would create a halo effect anyway.
Mhm.
You're like, when I see the real dude on TV, he's not very charismatic, but his AI version is like, he's pretty great. He's pretty funny. And I like him. But like, it's
God.
literally not real, but the transfer of admiration kind of went from the AI character to the real politician. It was
Mhm.
very, very dystopian and Black Mirror esque.
Mhm.
So, speaking of which, we're going to have a Best of the Left episode that has just come out, maybe, that touches on AI. And one of the things that is concerning is people do feel like they can ask questions and say things to a chatbot, to AI that they can't say to like humans, I guess I'll put it. And like part of that is definitely specifically for the episode in therapy. But I think that across the board, like there are wild questions and conversations that exist with chatbots. And like on one hand, like I could see why it gave people that safety. Like you don't have to worry about offending a chatbot if you want to ask personal questions
Mhm.
or about a specific group or something. But on the other hand, like one, you're missing out on a truly authentic human connection moment. And two, like, yeah, what control do we have over chatbots when you have access to the internet and the internet because of attention span and the economy around it, like, definitely gravitates towards outlandish right-wing shit.
Yep.
So, like, there's a good chance that your chatbot I think in the therapy specifically, they reference moments where they told them, "Well, just go die by suicide," or, something
Right.
like that.
Right. It
Yeah,
escalates.
there's no doctor in the background of this, like, there's no one to tap in, so, I mean, it is concerning when you don't have that level of troll, and they're known to be very people pleasing. So they're going to kind of be that soundboard and not necessarily stick to the factual information.
So this article has some thoughts on how to talk about AI. And even though this is from the UK, they certainly follow our politics a lot closer than we follow theirs. And so this ties in directly with the big election we just had. And it says, quote, for some reason, they, referring to the right, are able to process any inversion of empirical reality, but are acutely sensitive to being laughed at. Which, and I just enjoyed that sentence, sort of giving them some intellectual credit for being able to live in the mirror world, but then calling them out for being so sensitive that they can't handle being laughed at. So this refers back to our election and Tim Walz. Continuing, it says, quote, calling them weird absolutely works, and telling them their sole artistic output looks like shit also works. Laughing at people who treat AI art as in any way legitimate works. And this highlights the different discussions that need to be had with different groups, right? The left talking to the left, of course, you're going to bring up the climate impacts and the excessive energy use and the labor impacts and all of that. Talking to the right, though, that does not work. If anything, like fills them with glee that we're upset about those things. So continuing, it says, quote, talking about AI's environmental impact or its implications for the workforce will not work. They like that. It makes them feel dangerous. Instead of talking about taking money from artists, talk about how it makes them look cheap. If hurting and offending people is part of the point, then we can take that fun away from them by refusing to express hurt or offense, end quote. And we were sort of talking before we were recording about how like mocking fascists doesn't end fascism. People have been mocking Trump for 10 years. It hasn't stopped him. And so it's good to know the limitations of this strategy and where it's worthwhile to employ. But I appreciated this framing as like understanding what they're about so that we can understand that if we approach our criticism with too much earnestness, it literally fuels them. It is
Yeah,
literally
they
what they
love that.
love to hear
Yeah.
from us.
Because the cruelty is the point at the end of the day for all of this, and so if you say you're being cruel, they're like, "Great. Cool.
Yeah.
No impact." They don't have morals if they ever did, so,
At least
I mean,
some.
it's
And
not the only thing. Mocking is certainly, as you were saying, it's not the only weapon here, it's part of the toolkit.
yeah, obviously not everyone on the right or even the like Trump supporting MAGA right literally has no morals and enjoys cruelty. Some of them absolutely do. And then there's a subsection who support the cruelty because they don't think it's cruel. They
Right.
don't think that what's happening is cruel. And part of it is from living in an information bubble where they don't see or know about any of the cruelty that's happening. And so when they hear the criticism from the left, that goes through the filter of, well, we don't believe what the left says.
Oh, yeah.
The
Oh,
left's
yeah.
criticism of the right is invalid. So if the left is saying that we're cruel, then they're obviously lying and we're probably doing it just fine.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen conversations, they're online, so who knows, but where something extremely true and factual is said about deportations and how many people are being deported and the mistakes that they're making constantly, and people are like, that's a bunch of liberal lies. That's not happening. You're just fear-mongering." It's
Yeah.
just like, "Okay, you are living in the bubble for sure."
Yeah. There was an article, it was long and it was about cruelty, which we're going to continue to talk about, but I didn't pull it in for this discussion. But I will tell you this small piece of it. I think it was Adam Serwer writing in The Atlantic about cruelty and how it's been accepted on the right. And he went and he's like talking to actual MAGA supporters and describing cruelty to them. And they're because like they don't get it. And so he's like, look, here's an example. I live in Texas. If my wife gets pregnant, she's literally in danger for living in Texas because if something goes wrong with the pregnancy, doctors will hesitate to give her the treatment she needs because of the overly restrictive abortion laws. And people are being forced to suffer to the point of being on death's doorstep before doctors feel that they're able to step in and save the life of that pregnant
Yeah.
person.
And many have
And,
died.
and people have died. And the response he got was, that can't be true.
Yep.
No one would write a law that
Right.
restrictive, and they wouldn't want it to be. These were not like anti-abortion fanatics he was talking to. They were just people who were like, but that would be cruel. So that can't be true because I don't think that my side of the political spectrum is cruel. I don't think that they would write a law like that. So they literally disagree with the law as it's written, but they just don't believe it exists because of that bubble they're in.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you talk about AI in the context of jobs disappearing, some in the MAGA world might see that as cruel or, antithetical to what they thought was going to happen with this administration and how their lives were going to get so much better and we're going to bring back manufacturing, blah, 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 blah. But like they don't seem to believe what is literally being said. I mean, it was this week, I believe, Secretary of Agriculture said that farm workers who have been detained or deported will be replaced by basically increasing automation. And then also added, because they're sick, well, let me just read the quote. There's been a lot of noise in the last few days and a lot of questions about where the president stands and his vision for farm labor, Rollins said during a news conference with Republican governors. Ultimately, the answer on this is automation. Also, some reform within the current governing structure. And then also, when you think about it, there are 34 million able bodied adults in our Medicaid program. There are plenty of workers in America. So, first, it's automation. So, the jobs aren't really going to be there. There's going to be a lot less. And then also, let's use some poor people who are in need of healthcare to fill the gap. And like I bet MAGA cheered that on. Great. That's exactly what we wanted. But it's not. It's not. It's not what they say they wanted.
I this is just also very disconnected. Like, full disclosure, I'm in Georgia, married to a Georgia peach. So she has family who like literally ran a farm slash, cousins who went to school for agriculture and are now working at factory farms. And like I feel like this is very disconnected because one, technology wise, unless there's a huge government program that infuses money for technology advancements, we are not quite to the point of having fully automated farms. So regardless, like you're going to have people working it. And two, like it's already been automated, like in certain realms,
Yep.
and they still need workers. Like that has not changed. These farms that immigrants are being kidnapped from and like sent to detention centers, like there is automation that's occurring on that farm. But like that doesn't change the fact that they needed laborers. And we're talking about this currently happening, not years in the future, not a well-oiled machine that will be launched in, 10 years that
Yeah.
like this is when we're going to make this possible. No, they're talking now.
But they are, I mean, Musk and all the rest of them are interested in replacing workers
Oh,
with,
absolutely.
I mean,
And
literal robots, automation, like whatever way they can do that. And the administration is going to let them because they're too cozy. Everybody's close.
I don't doubt the drive. I doubt the profitability. The technology.
I mean, that's the other thing that was mentioned in this article. They said, quote, "They are now quite willing to lose money or their lives." This is the elite conservatives in tech world, in order to make the world a crueler place. And AI is part of this, a mad rush to make a machine god that will liberate capital from labor for good. And like, that is what they want. That is the end
Oh,
goal.
for sure. Yeah. That was part of that worldview that I'm like, if anybody was truly paying attention, like, I don't know, you spent too much time being afraid of big government and not enough time being afraid of big tech.
Right.
I mean, there's a reason why Elon Musk is trying to build robots. Like they've seen the future for a while now. I mean, capitalists who understand the cost of labor and have always, for time immemorial, been fantasizing about a day in the distant future, or maybe not so distant future, when they could simply do away with the need to pay humans for the
Mhm,
work that they need being done.
mhm. I mean, you listen to Peter Thiel say how he doesn't really think that the species of humans should go forth in an interview with the Times recently. So, they have a different outlook, and the sad part is that all these people on the right who are so removed from the socioeconomic class of these tech billionaires and the people in Trump's administration, they do not see how much they are going to be screwed. I mean, we're all going to be screwed, but they are going to eventually have a sad wake-up call.
I mean, look at Tennessee and their environmental impacts that, I'm sure people who voted for Trump are now experiencing the impacts of having a big data center there.
So I think all of this is getting at let's call it the progression of victimization of fascism. You start with the lowest hanging fruit, the easiest pickings, those who are the easiest to dehumanize in the minds of generally hateful people in your society. And the dream that those people have is, if we could just get rid of people X, then my life will be better going forward. What they cannot foresee is that those far right people who are sort of supportive of fascism are still going to end up being upset about something. And they're going to go on to another group of people who they then think are the cause of all of their problems. And so then those people will also have to be exterminated or removed from the country or whatever. And that process never ends. Now, I think that's kind of what Peter Thiel is more willing to say openly, is like, yeah, I don't like humans. I wish they would all
Yep.
leave. And if humanity ceased to exist and we could just have like free floating capital and robots, that would probably be better.
I guess he thinks he's gonna still be around or something, I don't know.
Yeah. So we sort of, I think, have a better understanding of where we are in this process, but the process is sort of a perpetual series of dehumanizations and propaganda campaigns to prepare society to inflict great cruelty on a subsection of the population. Which brings us to this piece from The Atlantic, the gleeful cruelty of the White House X account. So this is the official White House account run by the administration in the name of the American people. And referring to the White House account, the article talks about how they are posting like cruel deportation photos in the form of trendy memes. This is not just that they do sort of the official version of cruelty. They are getting down in the mud with the worst extremists of the internet, the absolute Nazis and reactionaries who take glee in cruelty. And the White House account is helping that along directly. And the article says, quote, beyond the fact that this kind of shit posting is so obviously beneath the office, the posts are genuinely sinister. By adding a photo of an ICE arrest to a lighthearted viral trend, for instance, the White House account manages to perfectly capture the sociopathic, fascistic tone of ironic detachment and glee of the internet's darkest corners and most malignant trolls. The official X account of the White House isn't just full of low rent 4chan musings. It's an alarming signal of an administration that's fluent in internet extremism and seemingly dedicated to pursuing its casual cruelty as a chief political export. End quote. And they are actually so overt in their cruelty. The article goes on and says, quote, even some MAGA supporters appeared uncomfortable by at White House's brazenness. And then quoting one of the extreme MAGA supporters online, they say, quote, if you guys could stick with the grim shock and awe and leave the edgy gloating to those of us who don't work in the White House, I think that would probably be better for optics. End quote. Like, when you're getting optics advice from online Nazi trolls because they think you've gone too far, well, I think the White House account and the people running it think like, okay, we're onto something. We're doing it right because what they are doing is propaganda with a purpose. They
Yeah.
do actually have a sense of what they're doing, the community they're talking to, and what they are trying to normalize with the megaphone they have. So, first, they are trying to dehumanize all brown people as enemies, and then second, the article points out that they are like goading anyone to try to defend the alleged criminals that they are highlighting on the X account to
Mhm.
distract from the real criticism about generalized dehumanization, gleeful cruelty, and the lack of due process of law. But they try to present it as like a black and white dichotomy of like, well, do you support these rapists who we're deporting? Or are you on our side and you're glad we're doing this? As though there is no middle ground where even criminals deserve due process because that assures that all non criminals get the same benefit, which is sort of foundational to holding modern society together.
You have to suspend disbelief definitely to not get the irony of the White House posting about criminals and rapists.
Yeah.
I mean, just I know I don't have to say it because plenty of other people are pointing out like the hypocrisy of that, but
Mhm.
it is ridiculous and just goes to show you that like laws only apply to a subset of people.
Yeah. Look, we all know how bad it is. It's not like anything surprising anymore. But because it is so calculated and they have such an army of willing participants, it's a constant reminder that your fellow Americans, we're not even remotely on the same page anymore. And that's something I think all of us will be processing for a long time. And how the hell did we get here? But I think it was the ASMR detainment video that was the first big one that got a lot of attention that they put out on this account. And I don't have words. Actually, I said the other day to the group, like, I have to go sit for a while and figure out the words I need for this moment. And that's how I feel
Yeah.
about that. And that happened months ago, and I'm still struggling for the words. It's I mean, sick doesn't come close to what it is. It is so callous, so yeah, I don't have the words. I don't have the words. It's not there is nothing that accurately describes what this is, and it is different than anything we've seen before. While it is propaganda, it is a different version because of these new tools that exist and the internet and it's memifying everything and that culture that exists. And I don't know. I guess I'm not really able to comment almost because I don't have the words yet. I don't have the words.
So I saw this video. I wish we could link it. I cannot find it again, unfortunately, as the internet sometimes works.
Mm.
And I feel like it connected a few things, like obviously the growing use of memes and like the humor that exists on the right that like we would say is not funny in any kind of capacity, but they think is hilarious.
I was gonna
Mhm.
say
Oh,
you
Yeah.
use the word humor with not a sufficient amount of air quotes in your voice.
fair, fair. But I mean, like, they have tapped into
Humor.
something, so even though it's not my taste and I don't find any of it funny,
Right.
like, there's definitely that going on. The use of AI and just this, like, suspended disbelief, and the way this person described it was talking about wrestling, and if you know Trump, you know that he is actually a fan of wrestling, and he loves it, and it makes perfect sense. When you go into a wrestling ring, you have to suspend disbelief in order for it to be enjoyable, fun, like, you have to disconnect everything that you know to be true to, quote, "enjoy the show."
Mhm.
And this whole video was really good, but one of my takeaways from it was just kind of what Jay said, that I don't think that when they hear that ASMR, like, it is the joke. The joke is they're not really in danger, but, like, this is gonna trigger the libs, like,
Mhm.
like, they're safe, like,
Yeah.
nothing cruel is actually being done to them. Like, the whole alligator
Oh, yeah.
Alcatraz, right? Like, that's a huge joke because in their mind, I'm sure they're like, "Well, no one's actually gonna be eaten by an
Right.
alligator. It's just funny to joke about it. Like, that's the
Yeah, so
gag,
that
right?
the left will flip out,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So libs will be triggered, and
Uh,
a lot is in service of that, right? Like the owning the libs mentality and like this humor. But what it does is it does put you in a false reality. Like you're not connected to the truth. We have facts that people are being physically harmed.
mhm.
But again, because you've suspended disbelief to watch the show and like they make the joke first. So what are you going to make fun of us for if we make the joke first? Like
Mhm.
you're late to the party, like we're already ahead of you.
Yeah, but of course, we know that too. We know that the alligators are not the security of the detention center. It's like we're shocked at and appalled by the fact that they would even say those things and what is actually going on in these facilities. But we're so disconnected at this point. We're not really impacting each other anymore. We're just watching each other through a looking glass like that's really fucked up and crazy. Like
But when you think about it, like they don't want to have an intellectual debate or discussion about whether it's
no.
humane to have those
No.
facilities.
Mm-mm.
And that's why, of course, put a meme on it. Like the White House posting memes is like perfect for our policy right now. It's perfect for it because, like, yeah, everything's a joke. Nothing's fucking
Mhm.
serious. Like, Trump can tweet something tomorrow and tweet something 2 days later and like change policy just like that.
Yep.
And like, it's all make believe. It's all this false reality that he's created and that his followers, I truly think they want to live in the reality he's created.
Yep.
Like they want to believe what he's projecting, which is, no one's going to lose healthcare. Like calm down, rural hospitals aren't closing. They're just, going on like libs do.
Yeah.
But the reality is we're keeping you safe. We're doing the things that need to be done. So like let's make a fucking joke about it.
So to wrap up, our last article comes from Current Affairs, and it's probably too earnest. If any Nazis are listening, they're probably going to find glee in this. But the headline is "The Right's Cruelty to Immigrants is Psychopathic." And this is written just before the big, beautiful bill passed. So it's written in a way to speculate as to what will happen if that passes. But of course it did. So it says, quote, "The Trump administration is proposing to allocate 3 times as much money to ICE's enforcement operations as it currently has, making it the largest law enforcement agency in the history of the nation and giving it a prison budget larger than the entire federal criminal prison system," end quote. And the article also highlights how likely it will be for ICE to hire psychopaths, sadists, and Nazis as it ramps up its ranks. They're going to go on a hiring spree
Yeah.
right now. And the whole movement is run on fear, right? In order to do the horrible things they want to do, the whole thing is run on fear. That is what is underpinning all of this. And going back to the socialist article that we talked about earlier, they said, quote, "The right wing intellectual project is simply to ask what would have to be true in order to justify the terrible things I want to do." And that is where the fear comes from. For Trump, the answer is that all brown people would have to be thought of as somewhat less than human and presumed to be likely criminals. Things would have to be downright dystopian in order to justify what they're doing. So that's the message they've been pushing for a decade. And here we are. This is the result. The article continues, quote, "Families will be broken apart. People who have committed no crime beyond crossing into the wrong country will end up in an Alcatraz like facility as if they are hardened violent criminals. Then there's all the harm done through spending money on ICE enforcement rather than anything socially worthwhile. With the money Trump is giving to ICE, more than $45 billion for detention facilities alone, we could end homelessness in America, a project that's estimated to cost anywhere from $11 billion to $30 billion. In other words, we are choosing to have a homelessness crisis so that we can deport your neighbors," end quote. And the only way to justify that is to trick people into thinking that things are terrible. And so
Yep.
that's been the propaganda for a decade since Trump's very first speech, all the way through everything they say and do to this day, is to convince people that things are terrible. These are the people making it terrible. if we get rid of them, things will be great again.
Right.
It couldn't be simpler.
And we do have a lot of problems, but at the end of the day, they don't actually want to solve any of these problems. I mean, I'm stating the obvious, but like they also need enemies, continuous enemies. So like once the immigrants are gone, you need to ensure there's still someone else to be scared of that the Trump administration can save you from because the population needs to be in constant precarity and fear. They need you to be kind of on the edge and feeling like, well, maybe he'll, save me from this now because he saved me from the immigrants. I mean, these are all the bullshit thoughts that I assume go through their heads, but they need people to be vulnerable and at their mercy because for the Trump administration, not MAGA followers, for the administration, the people that run the show, this is about ultimate power. It is not about fixing the economy. It is not about making anyone's lives better. This is only about power and money. Power and money. That's it. That's all they care about.
I think with people, I'm going to go back to the broken thing, right? Because I think in our American narrative, we have a lot of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, a very like, you are the captain of your ship. Like, if you just put in the work, you will do well here. And like, that's not the material conditions that most people are living in. But I think when you are fundamentally broken, like I'm going to say this is subconscious, don't believe yourself worthy of those things, right? And like people might see certain safety nets as like handouts. Whoa, I don't need a handout. Like I can do my own. I just need the conditions in order to succeed. And, Democrats have robbed me of that versus like seeing the reality of it is like, do you pay taxes? Okay. So why shouldn't your taxes go towards healthcare? Like, why shouldn't we have nationalized healthcare that you would benefit from because you pay taxes? I don't know if the framing's not there or like, I'm sure it's not because not a lot of people, even Democrats, are pushing for a nationalized healthcare
Right,
system.
right.
But I just can't help but think like part of watching all of your funds go towards the military and go towards ICE and this like policing to be part of that, like, feeling undeserving of, again, what they would qualify as handouts. What I
Mhm.
would just say is like a return in your tax money.
Yeah. Just to be clear, like capitalism is doing the same things to us. It's a byproduct
Yeah.
of the larger system, right? The larger system is keeping people in a state of precarity, is keeping people overworked and underpaid and all of those things. Like I don't want anyone think that I'm not quite aware of that. But the administration is acting intentionally in this way. They are making sure the enemy still exists, making sure the fear exists, making sure they have power at all costs, no matter what. And so that is the nuanced difference there.
Well, the fear mongering creates desperate people,
Right.
and desperate people make poor decisions.
Yeah.
And if all of this feels unsettling to you, we will be discussing in much more detail the word that probably sums up that feeling better than any. It's called hyper-normalization. There will be an article linked in the show notes, but for members, we'll be discussing that in more detail. But spoiler alert, the conclusion of what we should all do about it is take action. What we, I think, instinctually feel the need to do is not that usually. It is things like disconnecting or self soothing. But what actually helps, not just our own mental health, but also the situation we find ourselves in, is taking action. And that's what we wanted to conclude with today. There are activism trainings coming up soon, and Amanda has been reading up on all that.
Yeah, so 1 Million Rising is an effort to train people in strategic non-cooperation to fight authoritarianism. And there are at least 3 upcoming trainings. There may be more in the future. The first one was on July 16th. The links are in our show notes or description, depending on where you're hearing us. And yeah, as Jay said, the only thing that will make you feel better right now is connecting, talking to other people who are like-minded, who are also very concerned and scared, because let's be real, we're all feeling the fear, and doing something. That is all we can do and all that will make us feel better right now.
Yeah. So you mentioned July 16th, but the other training is happening on July 30th and
Yeah.
August 13th.
Yeah, there are multiple trainings. They're progressive, just the first one was July 16th. So it is good to try to go to all that you can.
So this one feels like a hard one to say we solved, but did we thoroughly wrap our minds around the current state of gleeful cruelty that we are living through? And at least
Yeah.
gave ourselves a direction of where we need to point?
Yeah. I think just a final note for me is that it was really clarifying to me after reading some of the stuff all together that the masses on the right who support MAGA, like many of them do want white nationalism, right? Like even if they don't call themselves white nationalists, that's kind of what they want in theory. But the administration just wants power. And if they can attain that power through exploiting those who want white nationalism, that is what they will do. And creating that fear so that everyone is scared all the time, which entrenches their power. But the next step of that is that all of that, because they never want their power threatened, that is why none of this will stop at immigrants. And we all need to remember that, right, left, everywhere on the spectrum. This is not going to end at being horrific to immigrants, because once they, quote unquote, do all the things that they need to do regarding that problem, as they would frame it, there always needs to be someone else. I wish I could get through to some MAGA supporters to let them know that they'll be next, just a matter of when. That's where we are.
Let's make a meme about it.
There you go. That's what we need to do.
Solved it.
Yeah, look at that. Down to the wire.
And if you have thoughts on pulling us back from the brink of authoritarianism, I mean, to say we're on the brink is underplaying it, but you know what I mean. You can leave us a message at 202-999-3991, send an email to j@bestofleft.com, or reach us on Signal at bestofleft.01. Thanks for listening. And I say this every week, and partly it's to remind myself as much as anyone else, because it is so fucking hard to believe that all of this is really happening.
Yeah.
Can you fucking believe that? All of this is actually really happening. So, continue to be decent, act like what you do and say matters, and do what matters most.